Now, I spoke to Captain Mark Weiss. He's a former commercial airline pilot who flew the exact same type of aircraft. He leads the civil aviation team at the Spectrum Group, and I asked him how the flight path for MH17 was actually chosen.
Typically, around the globe, what you find is the routes aircraft will fly are predetermined, and they're predetermined based upon a number of different factors. It's not something that the pilot necessarily has control over at all. You may be given options of which route you want to fly. But as an example, and let me go over to, say, flying from the United States over to Europe. Depending on the time of day, remember time zones play a lot into this. Going over to Europe, most flights leave in the evening from the U.S. So the routes are more heavily configured to go from west to east. Now, during the daytime in Europe, the routes will be configured primarily going from east to west. So while there may be different tracks, and the tracks basically are like a highway, and the highway in the sky. And that's predetermined, and it has a lot to do with weather and winds.
So the natural question is, a lot of us, when we first heard about it, the natural question to ask is, why are they flying over a conflict zone where in the last week 2 other aircraft have been shot down? Granted, those were military aircraft, and it has to lead a normal person to think twice about this, that this probably isn't a good idea. And there were warnings in the past by the FAA and by some of the other officials in the airline industry. But I don't know how that works, so if you could explain that to us, is what's the protocol?
Well, the protocol is this. Yes, the area that had been restricted was further to the south. That was more in Crimea. And that was a no-fly area. So no civilian airlines were going to be flying over that area. This aircraft, my understanding, was that this actually was north of that.
It was north to it, but not by much.
Well, but it was north of it, okay, on a corridor, an airway that had been approved and had been used recently. So it's like, if this highway is still open and weather is permitted, that there's no thunderstorms or other activity, the restriction, I believe, was above 32,000 feet. Below 32,000 feet, you weren't going to get a civilian airliner there.
Are there any special procedures that a pilot has to do when you cross into a conflicted area? Do you have to radio the control tower? Do you announce who you are? Are there any additional steps you take to ensure the safety of the aircraft?
The conflict, really, there should not have been a conflict above 32,000 feet. And air traffic control should be aware of that and should have handled that. My understanding was there was a conflict in the Russian controllers and the Ukrainian controllers, perhaps giving out conflicting information. Therein lies a major discrepancy of what could have been the problem.
Obviously, there's a lot more information that we don't have at this time. And one of the areas we're going to get that information is from these black boxes, which has been in dispute already. It's been, in a very short time, there's already dispute about who has or who may have the black box and what information may be on there. Tell us why the black box is so important to get.
Well, it's not just the black boxes that are important. What's also going to be very critical is going to be listening to the air traffic control tapes. The tapes are going to be, and they're held normally for 30 days post any type of an incident. What's going to be critical is, what information were these crews given? Did anybody try to get in touch with them? Did they ask for
a warning?
Was there a warning? Was the crew asking any questions? Was there weather along their route of flight? Was there congestion? Did they take this route? Who asked for this route? Was it filed? And generally, the dispatcher and the captain will agree to a route prior to departure.
As a pilot, and you flew actually the exact same aircraft, the 777, is there anything on board, any equipment on board that aircraft that would notify you of a projectile headed towards you, such as a missile? Would you see it on radar? Is there anything that you'd notice that?
Well, what you would see, would have been something on TCAS. It's a terrain avoidance instrumentation, okay? And it pitches up 27 or 800 feet, or pitches down 8,700 feet. So you would have a range that looks across the horizon on the vertical, and it also spreads out so you could see something coming at you.
So you'd see it.
Well, if you think about this, that technology was made to see aircraft coming at you at 500 miles an hour. How fast would a missile be coming at you? So if you saw something on there, by the time you've identified it, it may be too late. And it could have been coming from behind them, where they wouldn't have seen it.
The reports are the missile would have been traveling at up to 2,000 or more miles per hour. Exactly. Would that have given the pilot any time at all to make any maneuvers if you saw that?
If you had any time at all, it would have been probably seconds. And remember, we're not dealing with a fighter aircraft here. You're dealing with a large commercial airliner that's not made to be maneuvered like a fighter.